All right, we're going to bring in Rita Cinema and do a fun movie for a change. It's probably not going to be an award winner, maybe costume design. We'll get into that a little later, but it was an entertaining film. So Rita Cinema, Coming to America 2, the sequel to the 1989 smash hit by Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall. What did you make of Coming to America 2?
I think actually it's 1988, but we'll get to that. Actually, I had great fun watching this movie. I needed a movie like this. It's been a little too serious lately. And there's no question that the 1988 movie, Coming to America, is one of the best of Eddie Murphy's career. At least I think so. And it lives on and just as hilarious today as it was like 22, 23 years ago. The story and the characters from that original movie, I think, will have appeal forever and be appreciated by all generations. So I couldn't help but be excited, perhaps a little cynical too, about a sequel that would come out over 2 decades later. If nothing else, Arsenio and Eddie have gotten a little older too. Anyway, I wasn't really disappointed in the entertainment value of this new movie. But I do recognize that it's not at the same level as the first in terms of originality and just laugh out loud humor. I think when you watch it, you need to, first of all, you need to have seen the first movie, but you also need to be prepared for the same jokes and plot line, just in a little different wrapping paper. And to me, the best aspect, actually, after I even said that, is of the new movie is that many of the same characters and actors are back, and it's not hard at all to love them all again. And of course, they've recreated Zamunda. However, if you think about the first movie, if you've seen it, you remember that really the wonderful part or aspect of that movie is Akeem and Simi's new life in Queens, New York. It really isn't Zamunda. This time, most of the film takes place mainly in Zamunda, which, of course, while it's fun, it's also fictional. There's one small trip back to New York, and we have a recreation of the scene in the barbershop with Arsenio Hall and Eddie Murphy playing the old guys in the barbershop. But the story itself, the film itself, does not have that same fresh quality that we got when naive Akeem leaves Zamunda and moves to Queens to find a bride in the first one. So what does happen in this version? It basically opens with Akeem's father, Jaffe Joffer, who is still played by James Earl Jones, is dying. I did like the scene where the king, Jaffer, I can say it, Jaffer, asks, he knows he's dying, he's talking to Akeem, and he wants to make sure the funeral has been planned the way he wants to, and he's reassured of that. But then he says, so can I go to the funeral before I die? And so they show him at his own funeral, alive, before he dies, propped up in a coffin to watch, and it's quite a spectacle. Jones is, needless to say, is great in that role, even though it's very brief in this movie as he does die. So the concern is that Akeem has 3 daughters and no male heir to the throne. And his father had been worried about that. So through some major, going back to the first movie, but with some major plot manipulation from the first movie, it comes to light that Akeem has and I put this in quote, bastard son, because that's what he calls him, my bastard son throughout the movie. Harkens back to Game of Thrones, I think, in America. I will say this was one of the parts of the movie I didn't particularly like. It was a little bit unsatisfying how they steered the new plot direction. I just didn't like it. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but I didn't like the way they told the story of how he ended up with a son that he didn't know he had. Except that they do pull in some of the footage from the old movie and recreate that bar scene where Akeem and Simi are kind of on the lookout for a new bride, and you meet the Peaches twins and that witchy woman and that was really a wonderful scene in the old movie, and they do bring that back, so they set the scene again of what they were doing back then. But anyway, I didn't like let's say the conception scene. So, and that's not me just being a Luddite either. So the plot follows that Akeem, he goes to New York now and looking for his son, and he finds him. His son is named Lavelle and is really nicely played by Jermaine Fowler. And he's this very young millennial, New York kid, and, very different than Akeem, of course. So, through a series of negotiations, they bring him back to Zamunda, along with his mother, who is played by Leslie Jones, and eventually his uncle Reem, played by Tracy Morgan. And they are both good in the movie too. But here is where the story sort of starts letting you down, I think. I mean, they spend the time, and first of all, you're like, these people really believe that this African king is this boy's father. But anyway, you can't analyze too much here. But they train Lavelle in the Zumundian culture and his family heritage. They prepare him to take this test with the wild lion that he must pass in order to become a prince. He's betrothed to the daughter of General Izzy, and that will, their countries will merge. General Izzy, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. Anyway, he is a military leader of the country Nextoria, which I don't know, it's a little corny, but I thought that was pretty funny. Anyway, his sister was the one that Akeem left at the altar when he married Lisa in the first movie. So there's bad blood between these two guys. So they arrange for the daughter of General Izzy to marry Lavelle, and then he will be, their countries will merge and he will be king and once Akeem passes. But he will be a prince at that point. And this is going to sound a little bit familiar plot-wise, Lavelle ends up wanting to marry for love and falls for this lovely Zumundian hairdresser or barber. And through a series of events, he does end up marrying her. And of course, Akeem has to come to realize that his story is being played all over again in his son, in a sense. And he has to remember that, sometimes it's okay to modernize yourself and not live in the tradition of old. Anyway, that plot part is pretty familiar. And this whole story, really, that part was certainly, I think, kind of the low point of the movie. Now, back to General Izzy, just as an aside. He is played by Wesley Snipes, and it is one of the hits of the show. Snipes really is a hoot as the general. He is one of the best characters in the movie. It's really quite, he's great. He's just great. And he almost steals the movie from Eddie Murphy, to be perfectly honest. They also, they have the three, he and Lisa have the three daughters, and they're, they make them strong, tough girls. And, they try to make, I think this movie is really trying hard to make the daughters and the queen and Lavelle's mother stand out as strong characters. But in the end, I'm not sure it really works. It's still about the guys. But really, I think that's too much analysis. I think you should just enjoy the fun of the movie. We don't really have to make this about feminism and strong Black female role models. So I'll turn it over to you now.
Well, Lisa McDowell probably is a strong female role model.
Well, she was in the first one too, yes.
I love this. I love Coming to America. I don't know if it's quite my favorite Eddie film, but that probably changes daily, depending on which one I probably.
It's one of his best ones, though.
Which one I've probably seen last, but I do love the Coming to America. Now, when they were going to do a Coming to America sequel, I was excited because they were bringing back all the original cast members. I wasn't disappointed with the film. I enjoyed it. It was fun, and it was basically a great tribute piece to the original film.
Right.
If I was advising somebody to watch, I'd say watch the original and then have fun with this.
Yeah.
But it hit its spot. It just wasn't. It wasn't Coming to America the actual Coming to America. It was just a nice tribute to Coming to America. You hit on a couple of the really good scenes. I thought the James Earl Jones funeral scene where he wanted to be alive so he could watch his funeral, and then they bring in Morgan Freeman.
Oh, the Morgan, I left that out. That was
to
so
narrate
funny.
Yeah,
he narrates the funeral.
and then bring in Vogue and Salt and Pepper.
Oh, yes.
To sing him away.
Yeah.
As and in 1988, 89, they were coming into fame. So I love that. And then he just...
They had Salt and Pepper and En Vogue.
Yes.
So, yeah, that was great.
And then they just then he's like, I will die now. And then he just dies in front of everyone. So I really enjoyed that. The barbershop scenes, as always, are still really, really just hilarious.
They're wonderful.
Actually, I thought that was when Arsenio and Eddie really, really put a lot of effort into this film. Otherwise, I thought Eddie and Arsenio were in there, so this film would probably be made.
They were just kind of coasting along, weren't they?
They were there, so this film would be made. Otherwise, the film probably isn't getting made if you don't have those two. But I did think you said it, Wesley Snipes. I thought Tracy Morgan. I thought Leslie Jones.
Yeah,
I thought the all picked up the slack, and they sort of were the actual characters of the movie that made this movie sort of go. So that I liked, and I liked the tribute to Coming to America, and it was a fun film. I will say the dance, song, and costume pieces were ridiculously amazing in this film. But overall, I mean, it was an entertaining film, but it was not the original Coming to America.
We're not going to get that in a sequel anyway. But here are some of the things that I found pleasing in the movie, and many of them are the same things that you've mentioned. First of all, as you said, we bring back these wonderful characters that were in the first movie, acted by Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall and James Earl Jones and Sherry Headley, among several others.
Sadly, no Madge Sinclair. She passed away in 95.
Right, who played the mother. The new characters themselves don't add that much to the movie, but the actors are very good. And they, you know, as you say, Leslie Jones, Tracy Morgan, Jermaine Fowler, all of them added to the movie. They pick up the slack, and they carry it well. I'm just not crazy about their story isn't that great. And as you mentioned, the costumes, folks, the costumes are an absolute knockout in this movie. And watch it for that, if nothing else.
Especially, I wanted to give a shout out to that Senegal soccer kit. She manipulated in its sort of athletic, like tennis dress on the oldest daughter when they were in the Lions scene. The Senegal soccer kit is ridiculously awesome as it is, and then to manipulate it into that like athletic tennis-like dress was just ridiculously awesome. So,
but the costumes they put on the dancers, the costumes they put on the family. I mean, the Akeem and Lisa and their daughters, and I mean, just the costumes were designed by Ruth E. Carter. And she won an Oscar for designing the costumes for
Black Panther.
Black Panther and the Wakanda costumes.
It's a fictional land.
Yes, another fictional land. But both those lands have the best clothes you've ever seen. Really, she has triumphed again with fabulous costumes in this movie. Yeah, she is very, very talented.
If anything's to draw to this film, I think those set pieces
and the music, the dancing is
dance set pieces with music, and the costumes are really keep your eye on it and make the movie flow. I think a little bit easier as you're sort of watching the tribute piece to Coming to America.
And like you said, there are other things they've brought back from the old movie. You have the Royal Bathers, the Rose Petals, and that same actress, her name's Garcelle Beauvais, plays the Rose Bearer, and she's the head Rose Bearer.
Still looking pretty good, too.
Yes, she looks gorgeous. You know, and even if they're telling the same kind of jokes, I'm just going to second that the barbershop guys they're just so wonderful. They're so funny, and I just love that. I loved that part of the movie. And Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall they do it. That was a
Yes.
good observation. They work really hard at recreating these characters, and you just can't help but love that part of the movie.
Also,
Yeah.
I forgot to mention John Amos with his
I was gonna-
McDowell's.
yeah, I was
The
gonna
opening
mention that.
McDowell scene
Yeah.
with the veggie burger
Well, yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah,
was
yeah.
quite awesome with Louis coming back.
Yeah.
Would you like
That's-
a Pepsi?
That's what it's opened up in Zamunda now. There is a Zamunda branch of McDowell's, and that's what they have, the veggie burger, and they're all eating it. It's like chewing grass. It's hilarious. And John Amos is back as the owner of McDowell's, and he's constantly saying, "We are not McDonald's. We're very different." Oh, they have the McFlurby
The
now, but that is
McFlurby.
not the same as the
Their candies are on the bottom.
candies are all. Anyway, John Amos is wonderful.
As always.
Again, too. And
Greatest
that's what I mean.
TV dad ever, maybe.
Just to have all these actors and characters brought back is the wonderful part of the movie. We have our great palace dancers, as I said, and actually I loved the music in this movie,
Yes.
mainly because it was a mix of the old 80s
Yes.
stuff and hip hop.
Yes.
And so they updated that, but they had a nice mix, and I thought that was enjoyable as well. And finally, also related to the music, and this is a little bit of a spoiler alert here, the movie ends with a concert by who else? Randy Watson and Sexual Chocolate.
And that,
Watch the movie to see Sexual Chocolate
that
again.
actually is
Oh.
probably my favorite scene in the whole movie. It's sad it comes all the way at the end, but when Randy comes out
Yeah.
and then starts doing his song
It's
with
an
the
old
band,
Randy, dude.
and with his belt tied around his
Yeah.
fat stomach now,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just
It's
possibly the best scene
I
of the
like now
whole
that's
movie.
that's when I did laugh
Yes,
out loud.
and then he's
I-
holding the mic to the jazz band
Yeah.
as they're
Yeah.
playing. But
Right.
yes, I that scene was just ridiculous. If anything, we don't need another sequel to Coming to America. We just need a spin-off movie with Randy Watson on tour.
Yeah, yeah, that might be good actually across America or something like that. Anyway, that was worth if you're going to the movies, it's worth the price of admission. Of course, most of us are streaming it. And I have to say that when I talk about something like that, and it's the fact that all these characters and the old jokes are back and everything, it really is probably what I like best, and that's that it creates this nostalgia for a long time ago in the 80s. And just to wrap that up, I found this quote, which is exactly what was in my mind, I have to tell you, from a reviewer at the Ebert.com review site. His name is Odie Henderson. I'm going to give him credit because this is his writing. He says, he ends his review saying, and he had a mixed review, as well, but he ends his review by saying, "Coming to America is like attending your high school reunion. You'll enjoy seeing the familiar faces of those with whom you shared such fond experiences, but then you'll realize that the nostalgia of that past is far more fulfilling than the harsher realities of the present."
Yeah,
But please watch the movie. It is wonderful.
it is very entertaining.
Yeah.
I
And
think,
I'm mad at anybody who criticizes it.
I think if you could do two things. If you want an old school Eddie performance, I would suggest going to Dolomite Is My Name.
Yeah,
That's a more
really good
original
movie.
old school Eddie performance from
Right.
the 80s, early 90s. Granted,
Yeah.
it's not a family film, so
No, and it has a serious as well as
Yes,
a humorous
but if you're looking
aspect
for
to it.
an old school Eddie
Yeah.
performance, I'd go watch Dolomite.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for a fun, throwback to Eddie in the 80s tribute piece, this is what I'd suggest. But if you want a great Eddie performance of his recent, I'd go to Dolomite. Also, it was directed by Craig Brewer, who did this film.
Who did
so-
this one too? Yeah, I actually thought Dolomite was very much overlooked. I mean,
Yes,
it was
definitely.
really an excellent film, and it didn't get the attention I think it should have.
It just,
anyway.
I think that
particularly
is-
with the wars.
Yes, but that's an Eddie performance where I think he was
yeah,
actually
he was
putting
very good
in
in it.
effort, and
Yeah.
you got old school
Yeah.
Eddie, where this one was more Eddie is
A little
having.
rehash it.
Yes.
It's okay. You can rehash
he
Eddie
is-
Murphy anytime.
Yes,
I
Eddie
like
can
him.
be on the screen pretty much whenever
Yeah.
he wants, and we're always happy to
Yeah.
see Eddie.
The chemistry between Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall is here once again. It's not, they're not, they're not on the screen and together as
No.
much because there's so many other characters. But those two, their facial expressions, the way they react to each other, there's just great chemistry there. Always.
Yeah, definitely so. All right, so we have to put a rating on it.
Yeah.
Where did you go rating wise with
Well,
Coming to America Part
it
2?
was hard. I gave it a 6 because it's not a great movie. But I did enjoy it, and I think I definitely recommend it, and particularly if you're a fan of the first one, and if you need, the last few months we've been reviewing pretty heavy movies, and I needed something light, and so I enjoyed it, and if you're in need of that, then I think it'll probably be more than a 6 for you. I think as I say, it's a nice change of pace from serious movies that are leading up to award season and that I have overanalyzed for the past few weeks. So it's a nice change of pace. And as I say, I love the interaction of Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall. And I kind of love this movie because there was really nothing to hate.
Yes, I'm going with a 6 as well. It's a fun tribute piece to the original Coming to America. If you want to watch Coming to America, this is a nice flow into a sequel. I would always suggest watching it. It still has its funny parts. So watch away, have fun, enjoy, and we'll get back to more serious movies, I guess, as we go on.
Yeah, we don't even know what we're doing next.
What
do
are we doing next?
I don't know.
We can go a little more relaxed Disney style in the new Ryu and the Last Dragon, or we can start pulling out a couple more serious ones.
Well, it'll be a surprise.
All
for
right.
everybody.
TBD, to be determined what we're doing next. Be sure to follow us on Twitter on GLN Champ 5, and we'll let know what new movie we will be reviewing. Follow us on greenlightnetwork.org, Greenlight Network on Facebook and YouTube. That's our show, and we're out.